Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here, and welcome to Center for Independent Futures 2025 webinar series. This is our final webinar of 2025, and thank you so much for registering and attending. I'm Samantha Kolke, the Director of Programs and Services, and tonight's topic is SSI and SSDI, when to apply, who qualifies, how they differ, and how to take advantage of both. Before I introduce our presenter, I want to take this opportunity to briefly share a bit about CIF. We are a nonprofit organization based in Evanston, committed to meeting the needs of individuals with disabilities to achieve independence to lead fulfilling lives. We support individuals' hopes and dreams using our person-centered approach to enhance independence through individualized coaching, experiential learning, and shared activities. Outside of direct services with participants, we offer curriculum and trainings. Our My Full Life digital learning platform offers a comprehensive, ready-to-use resource for life skills education and curriculum. The platform is user-friendly and visually engaging, enabling instructors and learners to easily access tools, set goals, and track progress. Our platform is currently used in high schools and their transition programs, as well as other organizations. And I will include the link to the My Full Life website in the chat once I introduce our presenter. We also offer a 4-series workshop called New Futures Initiative that offers family groups and organizations a step-by-step process to create their own supported and creative housing options. That link to New Futures Initiative will also be included in the chat. So now I would like to introduce our presenter. We are welcoming Heather back after she led our webinar on puns on May 8th. And if you missed that, you can rewatch that through the CIF website under the 2025 free webinar series tab under events. Heather is a former special education high school and transition teacher of 15 years. Heather developed a love for special learning to support both educators and families. In addition to teaching, Heather supported families and students as they developed their vision for life post-exit and walked alongside them as they applied for benefits to make their dreams a reality. By making the overly complicated world of benefits easier to understand for families and young adults, Heather increased their ability to access and benefit from a variety of funding, services, and supports. I met Heather at a transition fair and was in awe of the support she offered through a love for special learning, including material she has put together for families that makes understanding and applying for government benefits digestible, to say the least, and makes the work involved palatable, easy to navigate. There may be time at the end for questions. If you do have a question, please type it into the chat box and we will respond after the presentation is concluded. And if there's not enough time for Heather to answer questions, then I will make sure to send responses to those questions via email after the presenters had an opportunity to look at the questions and write responses. Okay, after all of that, I'm thrilled to introduce Heather. And Heather, please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that lovely intro. I really do appreciate that. Can you see my presentation? You're good? Okay. So I'm going to jump right in. Like Samantha said, I'm going to be talking about SSI and SSDI, how to apply, who qualifies, the difference, and that, yes, you can actually take advantage of both if an individual, checks certain boxes. So I am Heather, like Samantha mentioned, a former Hinsdale District 86 transition teacher and transition facilitator. So I worked alongside families as they were coming into transition, but then helped them kind of figure out what their vision was post-exit. And then I was like, okay, if this is the vision, these are the supports, funding, services that are available. And then let's dive right in. Let's figure out how to get your student approved so that you can start using them when the time is right. And I took working alongside these families and my students, and just made master notes, just massive lists of everything that I was learning. And I put it all into a resource because I felt like I had a unique experience, and I shouldn't, gatekeep this information. So I created what's called Take Advantage Illinois, because I found myself saying, you should take advantage of this resource. You should take advantage of this resource. Do you know about puns, SSI? You should be taking advantage of this. And so I do have 15 different benefits that I review. Obviously, tonight I'm going to be talking specifically about SSI and then SSDI. But if you're like, oh, I wonder if she has any information or could answer these questions about another benefit, if you go to loveforspeciallearning.com/I L for Illinois, or you can scan that QR code there, and you can see all the different benefits I've created. So just to kind of like set the stage, and this is for families who are maybe currently in special education, getting ready to exit special education, are kind of wondering like, why is my student, why did they get these benefits or supports and services in school, but they might not be eligible post-exit? That's because in school, they're shifting from an entitled position. So if an individual has a disability, they are entitled to certain supports. And the teachers and case managers and related services are there to just figure it all out and provide those supports. But once you shift into adult services, adult benefits, an individual has to be eligible. So they have to be able to have documentation, reports, to check certain boxes to receive these benefits. And then if they check all those boxes, and once they go through the application process, if they are approved, then they get to experience the funding or the services or the supports that they have qualified for. And so I mentioned this in the PUNS presentation. If you watched or joined me that night, whenever you're pursuing a benefit, it is super important to lead with need. So I know that it is natural for families to want to highlight the growth that their loved one has made, how far they have come, all of these wonderful things they're doing now that they want to do in the future. But when you're talking about a benefit, specifically SSI in this case, or SSDI, it is really important to lead with need. That's probably not natural, so I just want to make sure that I'm reiterating that this is the time where these benefits are deficit based. So leading with need, being able to articulate as well as you can what the individual's needs are, and having proof of that is going to help your loved one be more likely to be found eligible. Okay, diving right in. Let's get right into SSI. I'm going to go through this one first, just because there's so much that is similar between SSI and SSDI. So I'm going to cover SSI first, and then I will dive into SSDI after. So an overview. What is SSI? So SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and it is a federal program. So it looks the same no matter if you're watching this in Iowa, here in Illinois, New York. It is the same process. And essentially it provides monthly payments to help offset living expenses for someone with a disability. This is not a one and done kind of benefit either. Once an individual is approved for SSI, there is ongoing responsibilities that need to be completed, updated, reported out on in order for an individual to remain eligible. And it's kind of like a wave, depending on what that, how that individual is using the benefit. There's going to be different responsibilities, typically on the part of a caregiver or a family that would need to be able to maintain that. Biggest question I get is, how much is SSI? You're like, yes, it's a monthly payment, but how much is it? So for 2025, the monthly payment is going to range anywhere between $633 with the max being of $967. And I'll kind of go, once I get more into the weeds of SSI, why there is a range in those monthly payments. But that is where those monthly payments, like the dollar amount, lies. So let's get on the same page. So like I said, it is a federal program, meaning it crosses state lines. So if an individual lives in Illinois now and 2 years from now moves to California, this is a benefit that will carry over with them. Also, if somebody moves into Illinois, this benefit is going to carry over with them from that state into our state. And there are some states in the USA that have the maximum benefit, that 967 I just mentioned. They also have state additional supplemental payments. So if you're watching in another state and you have more, your loved one gets more than that, or you've heard that other families get more than that, it could be a state level program. That's not something that Illinois has. They don't provide any additional payments beyond what the federal program provides. SSI is also a fast track to other benefits. So when I look at the scope of benefits that were available to my students and families, my number one, I always said, was get on the PUNS list because time matters for that one. But number two would be to do SSI. Because once an individual is approved for SSI, this is kind of like the first domino that will help other benefits be quicker or easier to pursue. Specifically Medicaid, so a health insurance. But then there's a lot of could be local, could be like ABLE accounts if you're seeking out that, public transportation, things like that. Having that SSI approval can make other future things easier and quicker, which who doesn't love that when you're talking about applying for benefits? Eligibility. SSI determines if someone is approved based on a manual, and the manual is called the POMS manual. And so I'm going to click into this. I'll show you this in just a moment. But it is not just someone who sits at a desk and says, today I'm feeling generous. Yes, yes, yes. There was too many people. We're going to say no to these people. They use a manual, and I will show that to you. You can access it online. And that's how they determine if an individual has, meets the criteria to be approved for SSI. And another highlight I want to say is anticipate and appeal. So another thing you may have also heard, if you know anybody who's gone through the SSI application process, is that it has an extremely high denial rate for initial applications. I've read as high as 65% of initial applications are denied. So what I would tell my families is just the denial is part of the step one process, right? If you get approved on first go round, impressive. But assume that your loved one is going to be denied, and assume that you should appeal. And a detail about that is the appeal is something that you can start online. You'll get a letter in the mail when the individual is denied. You can start that appeal online. I believe it's 30 days and that you have to start that appeal. But if after the appeal, the individual is found eligible, they could receive back payments. So previous checks all the way back to when they initially applied. So if you're like, why would I appeal? Don't just let that letter go and sit on, a dining room table somewhere. You want to follow up with that appeal because it could help to provide funds if they are approved after the appeal. And then I would hear this from families. This is just misinformation. Social Security, SSI payments are not pulled from the same pool of money that Social Security is taken out of your paycheck. So looking at the federal budget, these are two different buckets of money. The federal government earmarks funds to pay out SSI separately from the money that is taken out of your paycheck, for example, that you work at your day-to-day job. So I had a parent say to me one time, they're like, I don't know why, like I'm paying into this, but then they're getting a check, like, all this. I'm like, actually, they're very separate. So see those as two separate programs, even though the names are so closely linked. Who qualifies for this and when to apply? So I'm going to go into this POMS manual. If you're curious, you can scan that right there. I'll also go into my website where I'll show you where you can get that, because this POMS manual is not super easy to find, especially if you just put it into Google. You probably will not find it very easily. So this is what it looks like. This is the Social Security website, and I've listed here adult listings, just that's my personal experience, but also I know that that is the main demographic that CIF supports. And so there is a separate one for child. So if your loved one is under 18, there is a slightly different one for that. But as you can see, there is 14 different quote unquote sections of this POMS manual. And for individuals who have cognitive impairment, autism, things like that, you're typically going to find that listed under number 12. And so I'll just show you what it looks like. So if you go into here, you'll see right under here, it says 12.1, 12.02, 12.03. 12.05 is intellectual disability. And so this is just saying here that they need to satisfy, in order to be eligible for SSI, in order to qualify for SSI, you need to satisfy A or B. And so if your loved one has a full scale IQ of 70 or lower, that would be the documentation that would help the Social Security to determine that, yes, your loved one would be approved for SSI monthly payments. Where would you find this information? So if your loved one is still in the school system receiving special education services, if they are almost 18, recently 18, or about ready to exit, if they have not had an IQ test recently, that is something that you can request at their next 3-year reevaluation for their IEP. It would not be you wouldn't be asking too much of a school district to provide testing, IQ testing, because this is something that's going to help them access benefits. And this won't be the only benefit that you would need an IQ test for. There is a variety of different IQ tests that are out there. There's the WIAT, which is spelled W-I-A-T. There's the WISC, W-I-S-C. But mainly what you're looking for is the acronym FSIQ, which stands for Full Scale IQ. That will be somewhere in an IQ test report, typically done by the school psychologist, and you're looking for that number. And so if that number is 70 or lower, that's going to indicate an intellectual disability. And so this can be in conjunction with other disabilities as well. It could be autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, things like that. This would be one component that would help somebody to qualify for SSI. I'm going to scroll down, is autism. As you can see, this one is slightly different. This says they have to have A and B, right? So they have to have deficits in these areas, restrictive, repetitive behaviors, as well as one of these maladaptive behaviors. That is kind of the overview of the POMS manual. So again, I'll show you where to get that on my website because it's not super easy to find. But if you're like, would my loved one qualify? I know they get special education services, but I don't know if they would. That is where you can look to say, do I think they would meet the criteria? That also will help you when you're pulling out your doctor report records, your school records, IEPs, evaluations, things like that, is you'll want to find the information that can help to show that the individual does have those needs in order for the social security person to say, yes, they do meet all the criteria for that. Something else to make note of when you apply is there is a $2,000 kind of like, what do I want to call this? If the individual has $2,000 or more to their name, this is an automatic denial. So this is kind of like a red flag, if you will. And you're like, why $2,000? Well, Social Security uses a super, super, super outdated calculation. I think it's honestly from the 70s. I might have it in my the website I'm going to show you, but they use $2,000 to say, an individual has $2,000 to their name. They have enough to live on, which we know is just, that is clearly not enough for an individual to live on. So if an individual has think checking accounts, savings accounts, investments in their name, anything like that, that is something that you'll want to do ahead of time to get that moved either into a safe zone, which I'll talk about in a moment, or spend down if it's something that's in like a checking account. Get it protected in like a special needs trust, because that is an immediate red flag to Social Security for immediate denial. And that's something that you can do beforehand to help reduce that chance of a denial.
Quick question, Heather.
Yeah.
This is my question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it is a super outdated rule, and I've heard before this administration came in that they, meaning Congress, was maybe considering adjusting that for the 30 to 40 years that it's been now. Do you know if that's on it? Is that just not being talked about anymore? Is it on hold?
On hold is a good way to say it. Yes,
Okay.
I know that there was bills that were presented to drastically raise that. They kind of went stagnant with the last administration. No real movement. Everyone knows it's outdated. There's kind of quicker solutions than getting a bill passed at this point that typically families will pursue. But yes. Yeah.
And then really quick, I know I said to everybody that I would do these at the end. These just are very specific to what you're talking about right now, and it's in the right context. So one person asked, how far will they look back at the person's account?
Yeah. They do a 3-year look back. That's actually exactly what they call it, is a look back. I will go over that in just a minute too.
Oh, okay.
But if I've had a parent who was just like, I'm going to move this from their name into my name, right? Social Security will say, why did you do that? I can see that you just shifted it from their savings account into your savings account. So yes, they will do up to a 3-year look back, and you'll want to make sure that it's moved into a quote unquote safe zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this one other question is about, like, do ABLE accounts figure into this? But it sounds like you're going to get into that.
Yeah, an ABLE account is a safe zone. So if the money is in an ABLE account, you're good.
Okay.
No need to worry about that $2,000 mark. Yeah.
I'm done interrupting now.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
And then 18 years old is kind of the other who qualifies / when to apply. So 18 years old, an individual can apply for SSI benefits if they are younger than 18 years old. However, they'll take into account a parent or / primary caregiver's income. After the individual turns 18, they'll no longer ask for that information. So they kind of start with a clean income slate, if you will. So if they don't have a source of income at this point, that's going to be to their advantage. So my families, especially as they were getting ready to graduate from high school, they were starting transition. They would typically do that application right around 18. because they wouldn't be taking into consideration parents' income anymore. Okay, so let's learn more. So what I'm going to go to, I call them guides. This is what I created. This is the take advantage that I'm going to take you to in just a minute. And it's all available on my website. This is completely free. So if you are listening to this tonight and you're like, I'm going to remember that, and tomorrow morning you wake up and you forget, you can go here and you can look through it, because I'm just going to go right to the website and I'm going to walk you through it and highlight certain things for you. If you are curious about other benefits, same thing, go to this website. You'll see all the other benefits that I have. And this is all that I have learned specifically when it comes to SSI. I participated in a professional development with somebody who works to help individuals as part of, they work for Social Security Administration. So I went through a specific Social Security Administration training. I also went through this process with my families, answered a lot of questions for them. I had literally Social Security Administration saved as a contact in my phone, because I would call them and ask these questions. So everything that I've learned has been through experience or formal training, or just good old Google, because I knew what I was looking for. So I could go on the website and find it. So Samantha, can you confirm you see apply for SSI Social Security at the top of this?
Yes, I see
That's
that.
perfect. Thank you. Okay. So this is what the website looks like. And if you're curious what other ones I have available, if you go back to this and you're like, I need to find that again, you go to Take Advantage Illinois and you'll see SSI right there. So I'm going to go through all of this. I will also go through typical mistakes and frustrations. So this is what I would see individuals and families struggle with, or things that they had done wrong in the past, wish they would have done differently, wish they would have known about or understood when they were going through the process, as well as frequently asked questions. I will go through that as well. So I'm going to kind of skip through this. I just highlighted this in the previous slides about what Social Security is, that it is a monthly payment, and that an individual has to meet the criteria according to the POMS manual. So if you're like, I need to look at that manual again, this is where you're going to look at it. Right there, bold, underline, you can click into that, and that will take you to the adult listing. An individual does have to live in the United States of America. They have to have a Social Security number, a qualifying disability, and they have to have proof of need. So when I say proof of need, that's typically determined when the individual turns 18, because they're no longer taking into consideration that parent's income. And so that is what I've listed here, is that they typically enroll after 18. And then you're like, what can I use this money for? You can use it for any basic needs. So if an individual needs help paying for housing, personal care aids, food, clothing, transportation, therapies, respite, day programs, recreational programs, anything like that, as long as it is supporting the individual and you keep your receipts, talk about that too, keep your receipts, then that money can be used to pay for those things. And if you're in Illinois and your loved one is not on the PUNS list, please, please, please do PUNS first and then enroll in, go through the SSI application process after. And if you want more information on PUNS, you can watch the presentation I did on May 8th, or you can click into there, and that will take you to my PUNS post. I also have these graphics in terms of like time and energy commitment, because I think that sometimes, you know, as we're going into summer, sometimes you're like, okay, I have a lot more free time. I am willing, I have the mental capacity to commit more energy to this, pursuing this benefit. And so I've kind of put a indicator of how much time it will take to pursue this benefit, as well as how much energy it will take to pursue this benefit. Just so you, whoever's helping, you know, whoever you're going through in this process, that you kind of know upfront what it's going to take. So this is going to be a little bit more of a time commitment, because there is, you know, paperwork you'll need to find. You'll need to complete the application. Again, that anticipate the denial. You're going to have to do an appeal. There may be follow-up to that. So even once the individual is approved, there's setting up accounts, maintaining that account, things like that. So it is a time commitment. It is also an energy commitment, just because there is going to be some moving parts, again, in that application, as well as once they're approved, fingers crossed, right, to getting everything set up, but then also primarily to have it maintained. Okay, so like I mentioned, there's that $2,000 kind of line that the administration uses. It's super outdated, and nothing has passed at this time. So if an individual does have more than $2,000 to their name, currently the quickest and slash best way to move that money into a safe zone is through an ABLE account or a special needs trust. I do have guides for those, but essentially an ABLE account is just a safe bank account. That's essentially what it is. It's, if you go through Illinois, it's through Fifth Third's Bank, and the individual can choose to have the money available as a checking account, savings account, or an investment, or a combination of the three. Special needs trust, there are a few different kinds of trusts, and it depends on how the person acquired those assets. That would determine what type of trust, and that's something that would have to be set up through an attorney. So ABLE account is something that can be set up within probably an hour or two. Special needs trust will obviously take a little bit more time, but if there's like property assets or anything like that, that would be done through a trust. So if your loved one already has an ABLE account that has more than $2,000, you're totally in the safe zone. If your loved one has special needs trust and has multiple assets, it's in the safe zone. An individual can also have both a special needs trust and an ABLE account, SSI safe zone. And like I say here, there is a 3-year look back. And so if your loved one, let's say there's $2,300 in that checking account, and you're like, I don't want to do an ABLE account right now, you just want to spend it down, totally fine. You can spend it down. If you do, you want to keep the receipts, because during the application process, they may say, I saw that there was this much money, and now I see that there's $1,800. Where did that $500 go? And you can say, here, I paid for a therapy, I paid for transportation, I paid for, respite provider, anything like that. Just keep your receipts. And what will you need to dig up? So what do you need to find before you even start the application process? And so these are the things that you're going to need to quote unquote bring to the table. They'll need to have the Social Security card, and it needs to be an original if you're going to the Social Security office to do the application, a birth certificate, and banking information. And banking information specifically too, if the individual is approved and you want to set up a direct deposit for their monthly payments, banking information will be key for that. Disability. So not only their records in terms of results and scores, whether that was through a school or private testing or from a doctor's office, medications, medical conditions, anything like that, but also contact information for those professionals. So this could be contact information for a school caseworker, special education teacher, doctor's office, things like that, because Social Security will reach out to them. And then any work. So if the individual has had any type of previous work experience, part-time, whatever that looked like, you'll want to have a list of those employers and any earned income records. So think pay stubs. And if they have had that, you can get their Social Security statement as well. And you can find that through a My Social Security account. So if they have not worked in the past and you're like, what's a My Social Security account? It is just a really great place, especially if you're hoping to get your loved one set up with SSI. And in the event that they are approved, a My Social Security account is a wonderful place to have a lot of information you're going to want to check into. all in one place. So definitely worthwhile to get that type of account set up, and it's totally free. It's through the government. Safe, secure. So who is SSI intended for? So if an individual has difficulty obtaining and maintaining competitive employment, enough to earn income to cover their basic expenses, and they meet the criteria in the POMS manual, then that would be reason to for Social Security to approve them. So I've had families say to me, yeah, they start these jobs, they last about 6 weeks, a month, 2 months, if we're lucky, and then they're fired, then they're let go, then they don't want to do it anymore. We couldn't get transportation to work out, things like that. That would show difficulty of maintaining competitive employment, right? So even if they can obtain the job, right, maybe they present well in an interview, but they can't keep that job for whatever reason, that's information, that's helpful information for Social Security to know. Essentially, what Social Security is also looking for is something called SGA, which stands for Substantial Gainful Activity. So if an individual has had extensive or high earning work history in the past, that's actually going to work against them because it's showing Social Security that even with their disability, they are able to obtain a job, they're able to maintain a job, and they're able to make living wages to cover their basic expenses. So when looking at kind of your timeline of when you would pursue this benefit, if the goal for the individual is to pursue competitive employment, this would be a benefit you would want to try to do before they would pursue competitive employment, so that there would be either no work history or low work history. And yes, just talked about the POMS manual here. Okay, so completing the application. So if you're like, yes, I think my loved one would qualify. Yes, I know where all the paperwork is. I pulled it all out. I need to apply. If that is the scary part for you, you have a couple of options, thankfully. And you can pursue this benefit completely for free. I have had families go into the office, a Social Security office, and complete it with an SSA rep in the office. I have people complete it over the phone. I have had families do it independently through the online application portal. I've had people work with an organization that was supporting individuals for free. Typically, in my experience, this is not something that families would pay a lawyer to pursue. It was more so they put in the time and the effort. They found the time and the effort to do this in one of the other free options to get this done, knowing that time invested in this is going to pay off with quicker approval for other benefits. So you can apply through the online application process. You can apply via phone if transportation is a barrier, or distance, right? If the Social Security office is just too far away or not convenient in terms of hours. Or you can go right into a Social Security Administration field office. And it is free to do this. And if you're wondering, can I trust a Social Security Administration person in one of these offices to help me complete this application? Yes, SSA staff should be considered a neutral party. So their job in supporting people who are completing an SSI application is to help you understand and complete the application. They are not there to help you get your loved one approved. They are not there to help Social Security get people denied, right? They're just there to explain what questions mean, make sure that you're putting the right information in the right spots, that you brought all the material that would be helpful, that you have everything that you need to wrap it all up nicely and to get it sent off. So see them as a neutral party. If you are someone who wants to go into the office and have an appointment, you would just call your local Social Security office and say, I want to have an SSI application appointment. And so what they'll probably do on that phone call is they'll transfer you to someone who's going to set up an appointment with you. And that person that they transfer you to, who sets up the appointment. They're going to tell you everything that you're going to need to bring in terms of paperwork, because the goal is that you go in for this application, you do the application, you provide the paperwork then and there, and you could submit the application in that one visit if you have everything you need, which is why they're going to tell you that in the phone call. So if you're choosing to apply without the support of a Social Security Administration staff member, follow the application link. I did put the link there to make sure you go to the right one, and know that the same exact paperwork will need to be submitted. I have had families receive, do this online and have been told that the Social Security Administration, the local office didn't receive their paperwork, that they didn't receive the fax and stuff like that, which is obviously very scary because you're sharing a lot of sensitive information. So if that is a concern for you, you're worried about getting information in the wrong hands, so to speak, it may be advantageous for you to go into a Social Security Administration office, do the application in person, and to bring it all there and drop it off with an actual person. If you're like, I can just fax it, they will give you a fax number, but that could leave you questioning the timeline of when everything was actually submitted. So going in person could be something that will make you feel a little better about the process, and that it was complete. You can also, I've had families start the application online. They've kind of gone through all the questions. They've realized where they were confused or unsure. They would print it and then they would take that to the meeting. And so it just made the meeting go a lot faster. They were able to make tweaks as necessary, get clarity before they submitted online, just to kind of make the best use of everybody's time and to make sure they were handing things over in person. But you can expect the application to take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. And this is an online system that will allow users to save and return to their application later. So you don't have to do it all in one sitting before you hit submit. Once the whole application is done, you're like, how long does this take? Well, this is a federal benefit. No funding benefit is going to be an overnight approval. So you can expect it to take anywhere between 3 to 6 months on average. I did talk to someone a couple weeks ago when I was at a parent fair who said that she had someone who took about 10 to 12 months. I hear on the news that there's closing of Social Security offices in different states and just different levels of support. So this could get longer and longer. So if you're worried about if this is a benefit that your loved one would need to take advantage of soon rather than later, then I would put this at the top of your to-do list. To my knowledge, it is still on average 3 to 6 months. And so what is the Social Security Administration person doing in that timeline? They are combing through the application. They are confirming the information that you provided them. They're cross-checking the information with the application. They're, is this what it said? You said this here in this application. Does that match the medical records or the evidence that you have provided? Does that match the IEP with the psych report that came in? And does all of that say that it meets the POMS criteria to be approved for Social Security? And so if your loved one is still in school or has just recently exited or will be in the next week or two or day or two at this point in the year, if an individual has a case manager who is super familiar with them, that would be someone who could receive paperwork. And so when you fill out that application, you're gonna have to put who can corroborate your story, right? Like who can support you in saying that all this information you've given them is correct. And you could have a staff member listed there. So I would get these, all the time for my students, and I would be, confirming, checking the boxes, writing in my narrative, signing off and sending it back. And at that point in the application process, what I noticed is that once the school would get the paperwork to fill out to confirm this information was typically near the end of the Social Security's kind of review process. And so a determination was typically coming soon. So if you can give a heads up to any school staff, that would be helpful to them, because they do typically want a quick turnaround. If I got those in, I tried to spit them back out into the mail within 24 to 48 hours, because I knew that that meant it was getting close for families. Also, during that 3 to 6 month wait, applicants can receive a letter denying them for SSI because of a lack of work history. So if you get a letter in the mail and it's like, you've been denied because of lack of work history, and you're like, yes, I know that. I put that in the application, right? This is just because SSA is going to check first for SSDI, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And then once they determine, nope, they don't have that work record for SSDI monthly payment, then they're going to channel it through SSI. So you'll probably get that. I would hear families would get that usually within a few weeks or a month into the wait time. So just know that that's the quick denial, but not like the end denial, right? Like the quote unquote, the denied letter. Okay, so moving into approved or denied. So any determination is going to come via a written notice in your snail mail. So if they're approved, congratulations, they will get what's called a benefits statement. And so this is going to list out how much they were approved for, and kind of when they will start to receive those payments. And so full or partial payments is based on how an application, how the questions were answered. And you may hear people advise you to answer this question this way, or to do this question this way, or to put them on the lease, you know, or things like that. My belief is that honesty is the best policy. And so whatever you're currently doing, if that's the plan to continue to do that, then that's how you should answer the questions. And SSI will determine whether the individual needs the full payment because they have a lot of financial demands, or whether they need a partial payment because family or loved ones, caregivers are providing some of that. So that's when I said it could be anywhere between that $600 to $900 range. That's why there's that range. If the individual cannot keep records of their payment and spend it appropriately and maintain their receipts, a loved one can be what's called a representative payee or a rep payee. That's what you'll hear it called. So that person would be in charge of receiving the direct deposit. That's the method of payment that you choose. And they would be in charge of overseeing the spending and management of those payments. So they would be in charge of making sure that at the end of a payment cycle, that bank account balance is less than $2,000. And if it is above that $2,000, to make sure that they're spending that money to bring it down below there, that they're paying for things to meet basic needs, and that they're keeping receipts. So it is important to keep receipts. It is important to know when the paycheck or the monthly payments are going to come. And then it is important to be maintaining a balance. And so if, let's just use easy numbers. If it's the check comes on the 1st of the month, if you look at the bank account on the 30th and you see that there's $2,200, if you're like, I don't have any need, or I can't pay for this yet, they need to spend $200 to $300. What am I going to do? That is when an individual can say, I'm going to, or rep payee can say, I'm going to move those $300 into an ABLE account, right? That's the safe zone. I'm going to drop below that $2,000, and it still allows that money to be used for the loved one in the future. But that is a responsibility of the rep payee. So if your loved one would have, that wouldn't be a strength of theirs, financial management wouldn't be a strength, a rep payee is who would be in charge of doing that. What is the downside is if you don't move that money over and the balance is $2,200 at the end of the monthly cycle, is that Social Security could say, I guess you don't need that. You have, all the money that you would need to support that loved one. And so they may, if that happens a few times, they may say, looks like you don't need it anymore. I think, this benefit is no longer necessary and could take away benefits. So it is something that you would want to take care of, want to keep on top of. If you're like, what can I spend this money on? What are SSI approved purchases? The Social Security Administration does have a nice website, and they list that for you right there. So there is a link to click there to see what is approved or denied. But just assume that if it is for meeting the needs of your loved one, it's most likely going to be approved. Just keep your receipts. I can't say that enough. If they are denied, again, assume it's part of your initial process. Go on the website, start the appeals. Excuse me, I was wrong before. It is a 60-day window of time you have after you receive that denial to approve. And just go in and appeal. Why might somebody be denied? So there is a variety of reasons why they might be denied. Maybe they didn't hear back from a doctor's office to confirm this information. Maybe information was completed incorrectly. They didn't have an IQ score, a recent IQ score, anything like that. So if during the appeal process, talking specifically about an IQ test, if the Social Security Administration needs more information to help determine whether the individual would meet the criteria in the POMS, and they need an IQ test, Social Security can call the individual in, will say, you need to come in and take an IQ test. And so what they'll do is they work with a doctor to provide this testing, to provide the IQ score. Now, again, Social Security Administration, the people who are helping you with the application are a neutral party. So is the doctor who's providing the test. The doctor is not there to say, I'm going to try to get you approved. I'm going to try to get you a low IQ score. Nor are they there to say, I don't, so if Social Security is trying to save money, I'm going to try to not get you approved. No, they are a neutral party. They're just providing their professional opinion. So individual will go in, they will perform the IQ testing, and then the doctor will score it and will send those results along to Social Security Administration to help them make that determination, giving them just additional information. And like I said before, if your loved one is initially denied, you go through the appeal process, you provide whatever information they were looking for, the individual does whatever testing they need to do, and they are later approved for SSI. They may be eligible for what's called back pay. This would be back pay for the months since the initial application. So if your loved one took 6 months in the application process and they were denied, and that took another 3 months, and then they were approved, right? You could receive back pay all the way for those 9 months that they went through the process. So I like to tell families, I'm like, there could be a really nice light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like your time and all of this could be worth it in the end. So it's definitely worth it to appeal. If they are denied a second time and you want more information, including reconsideration steps, definitely go, you can click here and check out step number 2 for further guidance. Excuse me. So once they're approved, I mentioned that there is time and energy that you'll have to commit to maintaining that approval. So here is just where I was talking about kind of watching that payment cycle of making sure that at the end, their balance on their accounts, quote unquote, the money that's, attached to their name is below that $2,000. Families who are like, but can I just get the payment and then directly put it in their ABLE account? Social Security Administration does not like that, because what they're seeing is, oh, you don't need to use this money right away. You're just storing it in another place. You must not need this benefit anymore, right? Like this money is meant to be received and then spent on the individual in that month that they received it. So it's not a wise plan to say, the SSI was received on the 1st of the month, and I'm going to transfer it on the 2nd of the month into an ABLE account. That is not what Social Security Administration wants you to do. They want you to use the ABLE account as for any just kind of overflow, any money that wasn't used. So just, words of wisdom. And like I said too, setting up a my socialsecurity.com account is super helpful. This is not a 30-second kind of account setup, like give your name and an email address and create a password. There is some legwork that needs to be done. However, if the individual is approved, there's a lot of super helpful information that can all be found in that one place. So if I personally have my own my socialsecurity.com account, just so I can see my work credits and stuff like that. So if you're interested, definitely do that. It's helpful to get that set up. Okay. Individuals' work income. So another misbelief is that once they get SSI, they shouldn't work or they can't work. Not true. It's actually to the individual's advantage to work because they're going to make out financially. They're going to have more money in the end receiving SSI and paid employment than they would if they just received SSI. So once an individual secures paid employment, if that is their goal, that is the plan, they would need to alert Social Security Administration that they have started a new job, and they would need the employer's EIN number so that a work profile can be created in their account. And this is also something that you can do and help set up in a My Social Security account. And then wages need to be reported. So there's a few different ways to report wages. The quickest way is obviously doing that in a mysocialsecurity.com account, but you can also call and report it using the phone too. So what does this mean? So this means that easiest way to describe this is if an individual receives SSI and then gets a job and starts to receive a paycheck, administration, SSA is going to reduce the SSI payment 50% of what they receive in earnings. So just to use nice round numbers, you can look here. So if an individual receives $500 a month in SSI, but they receive a paycheck of $200 in income, you're going to take that $200 and divide it by 2. Half would be 100. And SSI is going to reduce their payment by $100. So you get a new SSI amount of $400 and the earned income of $200. The individual is getting $600 in the end, right? They're still making out better than if they just got an SSI, which means the individual would need to earn more than double the amount of their SSI check in order to completely wipe out an SSI benefit, okay? There are some what are called income exclusions. There's like a $20 one and a $65 one. Also, if the individual is still in school, a transition program, high school program, they have a higher threshold for that. So that helps them in the end. But that income needs to be reported. And so there is typically a 1 to 2 month delay when you report that income to Social Security to say, Jamal made $400 in April. They would see that $200 kind of deduction a couple months later. And so that is when SSI payments start to fluctuate. Like I said, it's kind of like a roller coaster, right? And it all depends on was the individual working? How much did they work that month? How much did they make? When did they, how much did they make a few months back? So that's why monthly amounts can change. If you're like, how am I going to remember to do this as a rep payee? You can set up email or text message reminders, which is super helpful. I would have my families do this. And this is just a nice way to remember to report your income. Because not reporting your income, if an individual is competitively employed and receives SSI, is a type of fraud. So they will figure it out. Social Security will figure it out. And they may say, it sounds like you owe us some money now. And that's definitely not what you want. So There are some exclusions. I'm making note of time, so I'm just going to let you know that you're like, but what if we need to use this money for transportation? Or what if we need to use this money for some sort of modification or assistive technology or something like that? Or what if my student is still in school and they're receiving money through a work payment program? All of those things. There are exceptions to this rule. And so if they're a student, it's called a student earned income exclusion. If they are no longer a student and have other needs that you have to pay for in order for them to be able to take advantage of work, it's called an IRE, which stands for Impairment Related Work Expense, IRWE. Automatic perks. So here in Illinois, once an individual is approved for SSI, they are automatically eligible for Medicaid. I say that today, knowing that there's a lot going on with Medicaid at the moment, if you're not privy to that. But that is a separate enrollment. The person would be approved, but you do have to go through the Medicaid enrollment separately, which that's not the case for all states, but Illinois, you do have to do that separately. And in order to continue eligibility for SSI, so there is a redetermination. So this can be anywhere between 1, 3, or 6 years after an individual was approved for SSI. Social Security is going to say, let's just do another review, sort of like you do a 3-year reevaluation for an IEP. You're going to have, someone's going to look, see if there's any updated testing. Does the individual still need it? Are they working enough hours? Are they able to obtain and maintain competitive employment? Are they making enough that they no longer need this benefit? So just know that that is part of the process. I will talk a little bit more about DAC, if you've heard of that, which is a disabled adult child, when I talk about SSDI. That's specific to individuals who have parents who have either retired or passed away and have a Social Security record. So mistakes and frustrations is not moving money into an ABLE account or a special needs trust. Go through the process, do it before you do the SSI application. They will do a 3-year look back, and they will look back. Another mistake is not appealing after denial. Just consider it a part of the process, and just, believe that if they are approved, that you will get back pay. And so it will be worth it for the individual financially. Not alerting SSA to a new job or a move. Definitely want to alert them to a job. High priority there, because you don't want to have wages garnered later. And if you move, just make sure that you're updating them. Again, this is a federal benefit, so things can cross state lines. That would be okay. Not using the money for the appropriate purchases. Keep your receipts. If you have a loved one who, or you're talking to someone, you're like, I don't think they're using that money correctly. If you're an educator and you have students who are like, I don't think the money's using for things that I need, you can report fraud, and Social Security Administration will go through the process and they will do an investigation, and there is consequences for somebody misusing funds. This is it's a very serious thing. A frustration is being confused by the questions. And I would always direct my family, just call up Social Security, right? Just call up that 800 number right there. Ask them the questions. Their whole goal is to help you understand the process and to help you complete the application. So again, they're a neutral party. They're there to support. And then another frustration was just having to routinely report incomes, doing those calculations, reporting that on a monthly basis, right? And if the money is helping the individual and meeting their needs, then it's a responsibility that is worth it. And Social Security does have those text message and email reminders. They're trying to make this easy for you. You can do it online through the My Social Security account. I mentioned this before, but this is 2 separate buckets. When the federal government looks at their Social Security and they look at SSI, it's 2 different buckets. They earmark it differently. Does it really take 3 to 6 months? Yes, it really does. And it could take longer. I have seen it. It does take longer for the, individuals who are kind of like, do you meet the criteria? Do you meet all of the things, the A and the B? So just providing as much information as you can on the front end will help that. An individual can be denied for a wide variety of reasons. So stick with it, do the appeal. It could be a paperwork error. It could be a lack of contact from a doctor's office. Could be a lot of reasons. So just stick with it. I said honesty is the best policy. If you're like, I want to make sure they get the full amount, just speak to how things are set up now, answer the questions in that way. And if things change, that's when you alert Social Security. Can the individual pay their own SSI payments? Yes, they can. If the individual wants to take on that role, understands finances, is willing to oversee that, or that's a skill you want them to learn, yes, they can. So if there was previously a rep payee, but they want to start taking over that responsibility, then they would have to get a review or request from a physician, typically, who would say, yes, they believe that they would be able to handle that, and then they could move the payments into their name. Like I said, this does cross state lines. You thought they were approved for Medicaid. Yes, here in Illinois, they are. You just have to go through the process to enroll, separately. And it is definitely to the advantage of the individual to work and receive SSI, financially speaking. Scrolling down to contact information, I have all the websites, phone numbers, when they're open, all right there. You can even get a Social Security app through Apple and Google Play. And if you're like, I love a good checklist to put on my fridge, I even have a good checklist. So you can put your name and email there, and it will take you to download that. Okay. Now I'm going to hop into the SSDI benefits, and you'll see that a lot of this, I'm going to keep referring back to SSI because so much of it does align, but it is different. So what is SSDI? SSDI stands for Social Security Disability Insurance. And so again, it is another federal program that the individual would receive a monthly payment. And so they would receive this monthly payment if they have paid into Social Security from a job that they have worked. Now, I was very confused by this in the beginning because I thought SSDI insurance, oh, that's another kind of medical insurance. Nope. Insurance just means that the individual has worked long enough and earned enough money from a competitive job to be quote unquote insured according to Social Security. So when you hear SSDI is not a health medical insurance, it is just that they have a work record, which I'll go into the nitty-gritties of that on the next slide, to earn additional payments. So for SSDI, typically, individuals with disabilities would qualify instead of apply. Now, I say that you can apply for SSDI. You can, if your loved one has, a work history and you never pursued SSI in the past, then you can apply outright. But most, again, in my experience, would have earned SSDI. They are granted or inherited SSDI based on a parent or primary caregiver's retirement or death. So if the individual has a competitive job, if they have a parent who is retiring, or if they have a parent who has passed away, or a primary caregiver who is retiring or has passed away, that's when they would qualify for SSDI. And yes, SSDI does lead to Medicare, which you're like, I know, Heather, you just said insurance. You said it wasn't medical insurance. I know, this is where it gets confusing, right? So individuals who receive SSDI after 2-year wait they would then be eligible for Medicare. So yes, the individual could receive SSI, SSDI, receive Medicaid insurance and Medicare insurance. Yes, if they fall into all the criteria to meet all of those areas, yes, they could have all 4 of those benefits. Eligibility. So if they're working and they receive SSI, this should be an automatic transfer from SSI payments into SSDI payments, which I'll talk about in a second. And this is something that you can track again through My Social Security account. And it does have the same individual eligibility as SSI. So you'd go back into that POMS manual because they're going to use the same one for that adult listing to say, do they meet the criteria? Again, this is if they're on a working status or they're earning it from a work record. They would also use if you have a parent or a caregiver who has retired or has passed away, they're going to use that same criteria to determine if the individual is what's called a DAC, a disabled adult child. Leads back to that POMS manual. So SSI shifts down in priority. So when Social Security is looking at what buckets of money they're going to pull this monthly payment out of, SSI is what's called a payer of last resort. So if the individual applies right at 18 years old and they have no work history, SSI is the only eligible payer, right? But if the individual starts to work and contribute to Social Security, they have a parent who retires or passes away, right? SSDI takes priority. And so payments are going to come from SSDI, and depending on the amount, SSI could then provide additional monthly payments, right? To supplement that amount. So if you're like, can they get both? Yes, they can. Also, you could no longer need SSI because your SSDI check would be higher. It all just really depends on the individual's life circumstances. So who qualifies and what's my new payment amount? So I'm going to be talking about if the individual is pursuing SSDI because they have obtained a competitive job. So this right here is a QR code that goes to the Social Security's like a brochure on this. If you're curious about more details, you can scan that, go to page number 4. I also have this linked in my post, which I'll go to in a second too. But if an individual earns $1810 in gross earnings in a quarter, so in a 3-month span, if their part-time job brings in at least $1,810, they would earn what's called a credit, 1 credit. If they can earn 6 credits before the age of 24, then they would be eligible for SSDI. Now, as the individual gets older, they would need to earn more credits, right? So that's kind of why the younger you are, the less credits that you need. So if the plan is we're going to secure them with SSI, then they want to get a part-time job, this would be something you'd want to start looking at is in 3 months, how much money are they earning? I have had parents tell me like, oh my gosh, they were so close. We were able to get them a few more hours. We increased it a couple hours a week and they hit that mark. It was totally worth it, right? Doing that little bit of homework on the part-time job, helping your student make a smart choice about which hourly job they want to take, how much they can handle, could really help them because the younger they are, the less credits they need to take advantage of this benefit. Now, if they're earning SSI and they're taking advantage of SSDI just on a work history, the maximum amount they can receive from both of those payments is still that $967. So if your goal is, they're going to get SSDI to make more money, not true. They would tap out at that $967, at least for 2025. Now, SSDI might pay you $500, right? And then SSI might pay you the remaining amount because SSI is the payer of last resort, their secondary payer. But that is the limit there for individuals who are pursuing this on a work history. And again, all of this available on my website. I'm keeping tabs of time. I know I'm already over my time, but I just want to make note of some things if this is, I'm either piquing your curiosity or if this is the reason that you came tonight. So this is a benefit that an individual would pursue if they have their own work history or they are dependent of a retired or deceased person who paid into their own Social Security. They have to have that qualifying disability according to the POMS manual. They also have to have a Social Security number and have earned a minimum income. That's the credits that I was talking about too. Different than SSI is that SSDI can be used to pay for anything. You don't actually have to keep your receipts for SSDI. It is kind of whatever the individual needs to pay for at that time. If they're doing this on a work history, it's very minimal time commitment. It should be an automatic transfer. SSI is trying to get people off SSI payments. So if they can shift them into the SSDI bucket, they're going to do that. They want to do that. So it is a much lower time commitment. It's also a much lower energy commitment. Yes, so here I'm talking about, yes, pursue your SSI first. If that's of interest, then do SSDI after. And you can check credits. So if you're like, I don't know, my loved one has had a couple of random part-time jobs. I don't know, maybe they do have a credit or not, and you're not quite sure. You can check that on a My Social Security account. It will tell you right on the main page there how many credits they have accrued. If you're curious how many they need, maybe they are over the age of 24. You can click into this here and that will show you a little table. So they'll tell you, up to this age, you need this many credits. And then this next kind of bracket is this many credits. And so it's incremental like that. And so if an individual is pursuing this because a family member or primary caregiver has passed away or is retiring, this is called DAC, like I said, disabled adult child. And so I've linked a couple things here more about that. And you can obviously contact the Social Security website to get that. Based on the individual's parent, I'm going to use parent just for simplicity. If the parent has that Social Security work history and is collecting retirement, right, then the SSDI payment could be considerably more than that $967. So pursuing SSDI on a parent retirement work record could bump that amount over $967, right? And that all depends on how much the parent contributed. Here is a list of all the forms that would need to be brought in for the application. If the individual is pursuing this, is applying for this benefit because of a parent retiring or passing, that would be what you would need to bring. And you can get more detailed lists and information there directly from Social Security. This does have a very similar weight to SSI. Again, they have to determine that the individual meets the POMS manual criteria, that they have the parent has the work record. And then after they are approved, there is a 5-month waiting period before receiving the first payment. Then on that 6th month is when they would receive the first payment. So I know that seems kind of weird, right? But there is that 5-month waiting period. If the individual qualifies for DAC, they would need to report income. If the individual is pursuing SSDI because of a work record, they still have to report income. So it'd be the same process and options as when they're doing SSI. And then, like I mentioned, after receiving SSDI for 2 years, the individual would be enrolled in Medicare, which is wonderful. Here's a little bit more information about the Medicare that they would be automatically enrolled into. That's directly from the Social Security website. They would be enrolled in Part A and Part B. That's something I am not familiar with, so I can't answer your Medicare questions, but I have put information to contact Medicare if you're curious more details about that. Pursuing this benefit, mistakes that I've seen families and individuals make, securing employment and not adding the employer to their My Social Security account. Take the time to do that, to set it up. If the individual's been working for a while, you may need to backlog some information. Take the time to do that. Not only to prove credits that they may have earned, but if they have that SSI, is just making sure you're not getting any red zone where you may have to pay money back to the government. Again, not pursuing work because you're fearful that they're going to lose an SSI benefit. Hopefully this shows you that pursuing SSI, working competitively, can actually be to their benefit and provide another payment source. And then just putting off. I've seen families say, oh, we'll get them a job later, we'll get them a job later, and then realizing that once that job is secured later, is that they have to earn more and more and more credits in order to take advantage of this benefit. So if the individual is interested, capable, wants to, you can make it happen and they can pursue employment earlier. It's just going to help them pursue another benefit faster. Yes, an individual can receive both SSI and SSDI payments at the same time. It's called concurrent payments, assuming they're eligible for both. It really does take about 3 to 6 months to make that decision. Again, this is more talking about if an individual is pursuing it because of a retirement or a death. SSDI monthly payments can vary. Again, if this is just the individual pursuing this because of a work record, you top out at that $967. If it's because of a parent retirement or death, they could exceed that amount. SSDI is different, that you can spend the money on anything, which is unlike SSI, and you don't have to keep your receipts. So that's wonderful. And should they keep reporting their income? Absolutely. Continue to report that income. And then here are some contact links and stuff. And again, I have another checklist. I love a good checklist. I'm a paper pencil kind of girl. So if you like that, that's helpful for you. You can download one there. All right, Samantha, I'm wrapping up. I'm getting close. So again, just for everyone who's still here, kind of looking at that big picture. So if you wanted to come and listen to this presentation because you want to know more about SSI, that's typically where families start, is securing that SSI monthly payment. Then after that, they will move into, helping their loved one begin work. They earn those credits, they continue to receive SSI, they report that income. And then after that is when they would qualify for SSDI through the credits that they have earned. They earn that additional payment and SSI reduces, or because they've been working long enough, if they have parents who are getting ready to retire or have passed away, then they would pursue that SSDI. I just went through SSI. I also went through SSDI here and a little snippet of Medicare. But if you're curious about any of these other benefits, I have those same setup of guides on my website. So you go to loveforspeciallearning.com/I, for Illinois, and you can find all of those there. Thank you so much for sticking with me and going through all that. I know I just did a lot of talking, and if I didn't answer your question, or time is of the essence and you don't have, you can't type it out on your phone real fast, feel free to reach out to me. The best way is via email. My email address is right there, info@loveforspeciallearning.com. It really is me on the other side. I will respond to you. I try my absolute best within 24 hours. And if you've emailed me and you didn't get a reply within 24 hours, please check your spam, because I try really hard not to get it to go there, but sometimes it goes there. So email me and then check your spam. And I hope I can be helpful.
Thank you so, so much, Heather.
Yeah.
I am going to, so for everybody in the chat, I did take down all of your questions, and I am going to email them to Heather and uh, send you all the responses in an email that will probably come separate from the webinar video recording links. I don't want to give you, Heather, a timeline for when to get those out. So you may be getting 2 emails. And I really, really, so if anybody has other questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. And then I really appreciate your time, Heather, and you always give us a wealth of information. And you are such a guiding light in these uncertain times. So I really appreciate it. To the
Thank you.
attendees, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And this has concluded our 2025 webinar series. So you will be receiving an email with a feedback survey probably sometime tomorrow. I am mindful of everyone's time and made sure that this survey takes only 3 to 5 minutes. And I mean that. Feel free to email me if it takes you longer than 5 minutes, and I will correct myself. Completing this will help us improve all aspects of our webinar series and identify other topics and guests based on what is important to you, those you serve, and loved ones. So thank you again for attending. Heather, thank you again for your time and experience. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.